Our guest for today's episode is Marcus Feldthus. Marcus is the co-founder of Post-Growth Guide and the author of Smådriftsfordele, exploring how small-scale businesses and post-growth thinking can help us imagine a more resilient and meaningful future. He is joined here with us today to explore the question of the episode: what could the economy look like if growth was not the main goal? Without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you for coming. How are you today?
I'm good.
Yeah.
And you?
I'm also good. I actually enjoy that it's getting colder now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a winter person.
That's good. I think I bought a house today, but let's
Whoa,
see.
okay, that's a big day. You seemed very calm compared to that.
Yes, it hasn't really sunk in, I think.
Yeah, landed.
It hasn't landed.
Okay. I wanted to ask, how would you introduce yourself, just shortly?
I think your introduction was pretty accurate.
Yeah?
I am the co-founder of Post-Growth Guide, and I wrote the book Smådriftsfordele, which is Economies of Small in English. I think that describes where I am today.
Yeah, at least professionally.
Yes.
That's a very good description. Okay. I'm happy I nailed it.
Yeah. I'm also married to Ida and live in København Nordvest for now, and have 2 sons, Peter and Victor.
Lovely. Okay, so when I contacted you, I was really looking for someone to talk with about not green growth. Ooh, degrowth.
Well, they're connected.
Somewhat connected. Anyways, when I've been researching for this episode, I had this main focus originally on degrowth, and then I knew also post-growth as a concept. Thought they were very same. I thought there was almost the same thing, which it maybe almost is, but there's also a lot of articles on the internet about the difference and them not being the same thing. So I'm gonna throw it over to you.
Okay.
And ask if you can explain to us what degrowth is and what post-growth is, and is it the same or is there any difference?
Okay. Yeah, I think let's take a step back to go degrowth for dummies. There's a good reason why you are confused. I was the same a few years ago. Before I started Post-Growth Guide, I had an agency which I started 10 years ago, which went from, it was a consultancy, and we actually mainly helped businesses grow. So that's what I've done for the most of my life.
That's your background a bit, yeah.
Yeah. In a mix of business and strategy and communications, and then in 2019 we pivoted that into. We just said to each other, Oscar, whom I co-founded it with, we said, okay, let's go for sustainability without knowing what that meant for us.
Okay, so at that time you weren't sure which direction you would take it to.
No, we didn't even know what sustainability meant, really. We just knew that there was something there. And then as time went on, we could see that there was this problem or conflict between growth and sustainability. So I stumbled upon degrowth, and then I rejected it because I thought it was just too confusing, too radical, and just it wouldn't work. Didn't really have any sort of transformatory power.
Okay.
But then I kept on coming back to it. And you also see now a lot has happened within the last few years in terms of getting this into mainstream.
Yeah.
So degrowth is a wide field. I think that's the first thing. So that's also why you can become confused easily, because degrowth isn't just one thing. It's like saying that all the parties in the parliament are the same because they all say that we should grow in Denmark.
Okay, I see. So it's a very broad...
It's a very broad field, but it's mainly portrayed as this very monolithic, hierarchical, almost communist, very sort of totalitarian almost project, which it is not. Okay, so within degrowth, within this field or within the group of, let's call them growth critical movements, they all agree on sort of the analysis that there is a problem with growth. or at least endless pursuit of growth. So they agree on that, and then they say we need to tackle that head on. Everything else is just you sort of running around, not getting to the important part of the task ahead of you.
Okay.
So they say, okay, in order to achieve a green and fair, just transition, we need to do a meaningful degrowth of the global economy. Otherwise, a green transition simply isn't possible. So that's the analysis that they agree on. On a global level, we need to shrink the economy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the green transition won't happen. And then from there on, they disagree on many things, especially in terms of how do we do that.
So they mostly agree on what the core problem is, or like...
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the problem, but also that because green growth, and the people who sort of advocate for that could also see that there's a problem with the kind of growth that we have today, and then they will say, oh, we can green the growth. That's what it means. We can continue...
Like make it greener.
Yeah, we can continue our lives and our businesses as usual, as we do now, but with new technology, we can green the growth sufficiently so that we can have a green transition into a sustainable society. And the whole field of the growth critical movement say that's not possible. So we need to tackle that head on. And then from there, in the book, Smådriftsfordele, we list 5 groups.
Okay.
And there are more, I would say, but there are at least 5 groups that can sort of give you an idea of the contours of the different groups. Where do they differ, and what do they agree on, and so forth.
Okay.
So there are those who believe in a very centralized transformation. Has to do with a lot of the things that are in the market now. You take that into state territory. State takes that over. Civil society has to do a lot more. They rarely talk about that, but it will be a lot more work to be a citizen than it is today.
I feel like that's what, I don't know, we often want to be like, no, it's going to be like this similar.
I think maybe that's why they talk about it so little. Okay, so that's one. Then there is another that says, we still need the market, but it needs to be completely different. So that means that maybe we have budgets or caps on resources because we say that the price mechanism isn't effective or accurate enough when we hit the planet Earth's sort of limits to growth.
Right.
There's a group that talks, and they also talk about a different kind of ownership, steward ownership, where you see a business like it is today. It sells stuff, produces stuff, has employees. There's a surplus at the end, but you cannot extract that. You cannot take that out to owners. You cannot sell your shares for a profit. Profit goes into the company or donated elsewhere. So we still rely on markets, but they are so different that you can't compare them to the markets that we have today.
Okay.
Then there's a group that talks about a smaller state. They believe that the transition is already happening. We just need to push for more steward-owned businesses, and then this thing will happen by itself.
Okay.
I don't really believe in that. And then there is you could call it collapse or emancipation, depending on whether or not you are from, I think, the global north or the global south. But now we're in Denmark, so we could call it collapse, a collapse of the current systems, which means that this group says that there's no idea in trying to make fancy reports and calculate this and that and try to change the political landscape because nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen until a collapse forces us to do it. So instead, it doesn't mean that we should sit idle. It just means that we should focus on how can we then soften the landing and be prepared to live in this new state.
So it's more about like preparing for
but also but it doesn't have to be meaningless in the now. It's just shorter supply chains, deeper relationships in the local community, very material light, because you know that if a collapse happens, it's going to be very expensive to continue, even if it may be impossible to get that sort of material that you rely on today. And depending on where you're at, you can call it a collapse or a emancipation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And why, do you have any thoughts on why or how, degrowth and post-growth, have become, the rise of them? They've become way more mainstream or, popular terms and topics, also festivals and stuff like that, in the last almost 3 years or something. At least in my
I see the same.
Yeah, do you have an idea why, or why do you think that's happening?
It's a good question. What I see is, I think the main thing is that reality is just knocking harder and harder on the door. And reality is showing or is saying that we cannot continue growth as we do now and believe that we can make a green transition. What we hear when we talk, and this goes on sort of behind closed doors, but it could be an employee, or it could be an owner, or it could be a director in a business. They know this. They look at their sustainability goals, as it's called, or ESG. They look at their growth goals, and then they can easily see they cannot meet both at the same time. If they have to achieve, let's say, 25% growth this year and simultaneously transition into something that has a lower footprint, or even better, into a business model that may be regenerative, those two cannot meet. So, and the more and more that is a thing that shows up in their everyday, the more and more they look for alternatives. I think sustainability is still a very young thing in Denmark. I know we've been talking about this for decades on a global scale.
Yeah.
But if we say that we had a climate election in 2019, I don't know how climate it was or what the consequences of it, but let's say that it was that. And then after that, there was a bigger focus on it. It's not that long ago. So for a time, people said, let's just see if green growth works first. It makes sense, right? Yeah. It's the easiest path. Now they have tried it. They see that it doesn't work, and now they're looking for alternatives. And degrowth and post-growth, which I use as the same, as a description for the same thing.
Okay.
Even though
use it as the same.
Yeah, because I use it as a name for a field of growth critical movements. But really what they describe is two different phases of the transition, where you can say that we are in a growth economy now where it goes up. Then we say we need to degrowth the global economy. And some nations' economies have to grow in order for them to achieve a fair level of well-being. And then there are the obese economies like Denmark's, which could go on a diet. Yeah. We're the country that
shrink down.
Yeah, I think we still have the record for producing most garbage in Europe.
And also very high on the consumption rates.
Yeah. We are top. We are some of the. We must be in top 5, 10 countries in the world. Yeah. We are very, very high. Where did we come from?
We came from degrowth and postgrowth being different
phases. So some nations have to. Yeah, that was it. Grow and shrink. Same with sectors. Some sectors have to grow to take over for the sectors that have to shrink. So there's the degrowth, and then there is a post-growth phase,
which is after.
Whereas after, where we need, whether it's a business or a society, to be able to thrive and function without growth, and that's the post-growth phase.
Okay, interesting. Okay, now shifting a bit more into your work with the Post-Growth Guide and the book you've very recently published.
Yes.
Smådriftsfordele, which is the Economies of Small in English.
It is.
Yeah. Could you tell us about like how you got into it? You touched a little bit on it before, but how did you come to write the book?
But then let's pick up from the process that I started to outline.
Yeah.
So then we started Post-Growth Guide in 2023 on the back of us simply accepting that the agency that we had, we couldn't transform it into something that we saw as a place where we could create change that really mattered.
Yeah.
So we created Post-Growth Guide in 23. We shut down the agency in 24. And then, so when we started Post-Growth Guide, again, we were like, okay, we can see that we need to do this. We don't really know exactly what post-growth means. Just like we did back with sustainability. And we'll probably do the same in 5 years again. So we started out writing a book that was called Setting Limits to Growth, which was based on our own experience of how would we, taking everything that we have read about degrowth and post-growth, which is very abstract, as you said, a little confusing in different directions, very either philosophical or macroeconomic, and then saying, okay, how can we translate that into something that a person in a business can act on today? And then we made that translation work. So we did that for ourselves first, and then we had a very, very positive response, but also a response that was, this is like fantastic and very innovative, but it's also based on you and you're a very small business and it's very early, so I don't really know what can I do with it. So every time we stumbled upon a problem in that process of saying, how do we set meaningful limits in our business, instead of making a methodical or theoretical or sort of a framework-wise process for how do we make that decision, we make sort of not a leap of faith, but a leap of personal preferences and experience where we say, this makes sense for us. So very personal. Yeah. And of course, that doesn't make sense for someone that's not like us. So, so on the back of that feedback, we're like, okay, second of all, we wrote it for startups mainly, and we didn't really get that much feedback from startups. So, but actually more from people in small, medium, or even large businesses, but that was more, a little more mature. So like, okay, it was the wrong target group. Okay. Then we made...
Startups don't have time to read this.
Exactly. It was too long. Then we made a second product where we're like, okay, so we need people to start the conversations. That was what we heard, even from directors in billion-dollar companies. They were like, exactly this, as we talked about in the beginning. They see that there is a problem with them meeting their sustainability targets and meeting their commercial goals of growth, but they don't know where to go from there. So we're like, okay, this is where we should set in. We should help them just get the conversation started. So with feedback from these two directors that we talked to, we made a course on that.
So that was within Post-Growth Guide, because that's a learning platform, right?
Yes, correct. And that's actually called Understand the Green Growth Problem. Okay, so then we moved on, and then we saw also positive response, but it's also like, it's not very satisfying to be like, okay, we've started the conversation, what now? So we always knew that we had to pick up where we left our handbook, Setting Limits to Growth, and sort of dig deep and figure out, like, how does this all fit together in a method or recipe where you can make this work in a business. So that's why we then went into the third phase where we said, then we need to write a book. Not because you have to write a book to come up with that, but we experienced from the first time around that it's just a very good learning process for us.
Yeah, it's a good format.
It's a good format because there is a lot on the line. At least for us, Oscar and I, we are best friends going 15, no more. We are older now. 18 years back. Oscar was best man at my wedding. And so we also we have learned that we need to sort of put mechanisms in place that externally or in some way forces us to not just be friends.
To have some
and to
deadlines.
be too soft on each other and have fun.
Okay.
So this is a very good way for us to do that. And we also got an editor to help us take that outside-in perspective. And that was what then sort of led us into writing Economies of Small. At first, we didn't know that it should be Economies of Small. We thought that we were writing Setting Limits to Growth 2.0.
Yeah, like a guide.
More also based on our own experience, but we ended up taking that almost entirely out of it.
Okay. Interesting.
And only later sort of in the process, we figured out that there is actually something that is called Economies of Small that is distinguishable from Economies of Large, and that is what we believe is a leverage point for something that can really change how we do business, because this is what is, to us, that's what is important now, because there's a lot of out there. There's also the donut model.
Yeah.
There's the planetary business framework, which has been translated into also something with business. There are so many different frameworks.
Regenerative
exactly.
Economy.
There's all of that, but to be honest, from a point of view of us we started our own business while we studied, so that has been that's our reference. And in that work, we have worked as a consultants for other businesses, and all of the other frameworks that are out there are either too soft. It's too soft is not the right word. They don't have a hierarchy in a sense, and they don't tell you how the things fit together. For example, the donut model.
Okay, yeah.
I taught at the KAOSPILOT in January, where we had the donut model exercise, which we usually do, where we ask people, and it's not only when you are a student at KAOSPILOT, this is also grown people with 30 years of experience in a business.
Yeah.
The same thing happens all along. You're asked to look at the donut model and then prioritize and evaluate sort of where do you have the most positive impact and the most negative impact. So you do that.
Yeah.
The donut model shows you the planetary boundaries on the outside. That's the ceiling that you shouldn't go above. And then it shows you the social foundation in the middle, which you should stay above, which is well-being, housing, food, education,
it's like
all
social
that.
Limits.
And what happens when you look at that is you're excited, you map the things, you have green and you have red, and maybe you have something in yellow, which you don't really know. And then you look at it and you're like, what do I do now?
Like what happens now?
How do I get this into my business, or where do I start? Which of the planetary boundaries are the most important? So we really wanted to set out and create a method where we thought this is something that we could sit down, look at it, and then just go from start to bottom, or really it's a circle that sort of loops, and when you do one thing, it affects the other, and so forth, as all models should be. But that really, you cannot go through this model with a genuine intention without it transforming how you do your business. You cannot think in Economies of Small without having to do something radically different, because it's just a new paradigm.
So you would say like going into it means that something changed.
If we are successful, there will be cap washing or small washing, because that's just how the world works.
Yeah.
But it's just radically different, because all conventional or mainstream business theories and practice and models are based on the idea that bigger is always better. Like you should see it as we live sort of in this concrete box with 5 meters of concrete on all sides. Okay. And within this box, there's only one story of success, and that story is that you need to have a big business to be successful.
Yeah, and you need growth.
And and the only thing that is better than big is bigger, which means growth. And when you then look at the problems with green growth, and maybe we should come back into that later.
Yeah.
And when you also look at that 99% of businesses are actually small. Like 99% of businesses in Denmark, less than 100 people. In the EU, less than 250 people. They employ roughly 2/3 of the private sector.
Okay.
And account for, depending on the year, between 50 to 60 of GDP, classic GDP. It's very substantial.
Okay.
And we have mainly heard, in the recent years, we've heard about the superstar companies.
But that's all you hear about.
Novo, Ørsted, Lego, all that. And there was this, and this should be broadcasted everywhere. There was this interview with Christine Lagarde, which is president of the European Central Bank.
Okay.
A DR journalist. He was interviewing her for a business radio program. And he tries to confront her with this story. So in Denmark, we have this superstar companies. They drive the growth. They drive the economic activity. It means that the small and medium-sized businesses mean less or less meaningful. And then she just stops him, full stop, in mid-sentence and says, but they haven't gone away. He tries again, and she stops him again and says, no. But the small and medium-sized businesses have not gotten away. So, and this is just what happens within the concrete box. It is, we look for the successful. That's the big story. And the successful are those who are big. And what we have tried to do with this book in the Economies of Small is to sort of dig a hole in this concrete box for those who want to get out.
But it's also about redefining success then.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. And not to say that this is an either or.
No.
This is not to say that when we can say, these small businesses can do something different than the large ones, and we need this. This doesn't say that no big businesses can be successful or meaningful, just as the other way around. When someone points to, but we need this big business to do this, it doesn't have anything to say. It's an alternative. It's an alternative story, and fortunately, the world is more colorful than being black and white.
Yeah, that's very good.
So that's what we've tried to do.
Yeah, I also then I didn't know this about the this portion of smaller companies being so big. I had no idea. Somehow, maybe you always just think that the large companies are what makes out for most of it.
But it's because it's also it's just as impressive that it means that there is 1% that accounts for 50% of the GDP, which is also impressive.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't take anything away from the other half.
Exactly. But what it makes me think of is that there's great potential for change, or impact, if you're focusing on these businesses.
Yes.
Even more than changing the big giants.
Yes, because the problem is, and that is what has happened or accumulated over the many years where bigger is better has dominated, is that we have across sectors build a system that favors the big because they're big. Not because it's better for all of us or because it's smarter or anything like that. Often it's just because they're big. And that means that often when the small delivers, they do it in spite of how the system works, which makes it even more impressive.
Yeah, totally.
So to sum it up, we need both, but we live in a world that has size blind. We're just blinded by giantism, and we need to broaden our horizon a little.
Yeah, I like this size blind. It's a good concept. But I'm curious, now we talked about that it is gaining traction, it's getting more popular, this way of looking at things and the theory of degrowth and post-growth. But do you meet resistance and fear also in your work, or when you talk to people?
Yes,
and in which,
all of it.
How does it come out? What are people afraid of?
They fear, and this comes back to this sort of dominant story about success. They fear to be unsuccessful, seen as unambitious. We are all social creatures, and we want our friends and families and local communities or the newspapers to look at us and recognize us for doing something good, to be proud of us. So that's on a very personal level, and Oscar and I experienced that sort of in the transition process. We have always had a small business. We were 10 employees when we were the most. So our transition was fast because we could transition fast. That's one of the, we would say, the economies of small is the flexibility, the ability to change rather fast because you're simply less heavy, you have less infrastructure you have to change, you have less capital you have invested in certain things that you then want regain. So all that things, but still, just from a mental and emotional point of view, it took quite a long time for us to process. If we do not grow, or if we talk about this stuff, can we then attract employees? Can we get customers? What will others think of us? Is this even the most effective way of doing things? Is this the most impactful way? So there is this fear. And if you're in a business and you're the only one who sits with this, which is like we get these anonymous messages where they write us, I'm so happy that that you educate on this publicly. I work in this and this company, and I don't know what to do because I have to keep on advocating people on growing this. But I know that it doesn't really make sense. But it's also the only thing that I know to do, and I don't know what to say in there. And so it's just so there's the fear of being unambitious or even left out at the next meeting. Some might even be afraid of being fired.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a problem in Denmark necessarily, but in other countries. And then there is, so that's one thing, the emotional. Then there is the sort of a knowledge problem, which is, so even if you had the courage or you found others that you have organized yourself, you're an I5, you share the risk and you feel energized to do it, you don't know what to do. And that's really what Smådriftsfordele is mainly about. It's also telling you, how do you go about it? Sort of in 3 phases. How do you define meaningful limits? How do you find your company's edge, so to say?
How do you find the appropriate size?
Exactly. And how do you find that in your sector, in your company? How are you inspired by science, but not letting it dictate you in a sense? Meaning that you translate it into something that makes sense for you? How do you make a business plan that enables you to do this? How do you make a finance plan? How do you have how do you reach a level where you're profitable so that it runs, that the business can run itself without outside support, and also in a state where you can then scale your impact effectively in other ways, like you can open access your supply chain, you can become an ally for social movements to change legislation, you can do work on changing norms. So that's one, defining limits. There's one about protecting them in terms of how do you have the right ownership that enables you to do so? How do you have the right financing model that enables you to do that? How do you have the right governance structures that puts this in place? And then thirdly, when you have that, then how do you leverage that? Because you could also just be small and unsuccessful because you organize yourself after the economies of large scale, which means you're small, but you try to do what the big ones do, so you're just a worse version of them. Or you can be small, limit yourself, and then use that self-limitation as your edge to your advantage.
So the big question is how, I guess. So that's for most people, because, that would also be my question.
Then how? And then lastly, as I said earlier, we have a political system and some institutions, both in distribution and culturally, that are barriers, because it's so ingrained in us that that bigger is better, that it has become a natural part of everything in our system. So a good example is the food system, where actually small farmers produce more nutrition per hectare than large and industrialized ones. They also feed more people. And this has been proven across many scientific studies and reports. But still, we don't hear about that. And in Denmark, or even globally, many small farmers struggle commercially. And that's because, and we can take Denmark as an example, we have a system that favors the big because they're big, not because they're more productive. There's you get an income support based on how big your farm is. So you don't have to be more, not structured. Based on what you produce, how many you feed. So the smaller can be more productive than the large ones. Doesn't matter because the larger ones get more support.
Yeah,
and the financial support in or state support in the food system is so substantial that you can't take this out of the equation. I think on an EU level, first of all, most of the support goes to the largest and richest farms. But for the 90% other, it's 50% of their surplus that comes from this. So this is just a big part of it. So you can't take that out of it. Secondly, they're not acknowledged as serious like businesses. So they often have a hard time getting a loan in the bank.
Yeah.
They can't get startup support as others.
They're not as credible.
No. And thirdly, the price is just wrong. If the large industrialized ones paid for the amount of CO2, the real price for the amount that they pollute, not only the atmosphere with greenhouse gases, but also the inner seas and coast waters,
biodiversity loss,
and our fresh water and all. If they paid the real price for that, then the smaller ones would also be rewarded for not polluting, but for regenerating the earth so that we have fertile ground also in the future. Yeah. So there's the emotional barriers, there are the insights and tools barriers, and then there are sort of the structural legislation and institutional barriers.
Yeah.
And we can work on all of them.
That's good. That brings me hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. First, unfortunately, the time runs away from us, but I have a couple more questions.
Yeah, sure.
But maybe just shortly. It's just because this what you're talking about also reminds me of something I read. Like, there's a lot of degrowth thinkers that also point out that we have to like incorporate systemic changes alongside the more local and like specific initiatives that we can do ourselves. But like, is there? Yeah, do you have any visions of like where do we start on that? Is it all politics, or like do you think we can go from bottom up?
We have to go from bottom up.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are a few things that I want to say about that.
It's also a big question.
Yeah, but it's a really good question. The first is we need to think in organizations and businesses as a part of it. Very often they're left out.
Okay, yeah.
Or they leave themselves out. And we just can't afford to do so because, for example, when businesses say as a bad excuse, we can't do this because there's no demand for it. That's just like bollocks, because demand just doesn't come out of nowhere. Like demand and supply affect each other. And one could say that we live more in a supply-driven market than a demand-driven market, meaning that what happens in the market is that mostly decided by what we demand or what is made accessible by companies.
What is produced for us.
Yeah, because it's not a coincidence that candy is right by the counter in the supermarket.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a coincidence that we eat so much meat in Denmark. That is a result of years and years of lobbying. It's a result of not only in terms of advertising and what we are seeing, but also in terms of legislation, prices, accessibility in terms of what does it cost, accessibility in terms of what appears at the top when I look at recipes.
Yeah. There's all these small things.
Yeah. So we need businesses because demand doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from supply. So we need also a supply-driven change, which also means that we need to have businesses that can prioritize that, which is where we would say in order to do that, they should be growth independent.
Yeah.
Because if they needed to grow, they would do what was the easiest in the short run to do what they could sell now, not push for long-term change, which prioritizes how can we survive in the long run. So that's the first thing in terms of what we need businesses for. And also because they affect both politics, they can block it, like we've seen many times in Denmark. Look at what happened with CO2 tax on the fishing industry, which got postponed or neutralized.
Yeah.
What happened with the built environment industry last year and so forth. But also it affects what we do as employees. Like it affects and as citizens.
How we work.
Well, like if I don't think that I have a job, if I advocate for this, will I then do it? So we need businesses in this. That's also why we focus so much on it. There's also a bias from our side because it's the only thing we know how to do. But that's why we also think it's meaningful.
Yeah, it's important.
And in terms of then where do change come from, I'm a big believer in bottom up. I think what we have also seen in terms of politics, like top down, has just been very disappointing. Yeah. And I'll finish on this, which is a story that I've been telling for 4 years, which I actually first learned from my aunt.
Yeah.
We had a podcast together and did public talks as well.
Okay.
She took a course in Folkeuniversitetet on the Danish welfare state.
Okay.
And the Danish welfare state is built from the bottom and up, not from the top.
That's very interesting. I feel like it's always talked about that it's built from the top.
But it's not. Down. It's anchored at the top. Eventually, they took what was built from the bottom and up and said, now this is a good idea. Let's do it. So, for example, let's take schools. There was some new research a few years ago that came out. First, you thought that it was a king many centuries back who did these, was it rider schools or knight schools? Like this was how it started. That came on the back of you had some teaching in churches. But it turns out that there was something in between, and that was just regular, ordinary people who were like, okay, I think it's a good idea that my kids can actually read the things that goes on over in the church. And there were a lot of, would you call them warriors back then, or military personnel, let's say that were injured. So they couldn't go to war anymore, but they knew how to ride. So the parents then invited them into their home and started and told them to teach. And that was how it started. And then they got more and more kids together, bundle it. And then that sort of spread from village to village. We have health insurance. That started as someone also in a village where they were like, it's really not a good thing that people don't go to the doctors because they can't afford it. So why don't we all chime in, the one of us who can afford it, into a little cigar box? Then we have someone who manages the cigar box. And then when someone is ill, they go to the man with and it probably was a man. Could also be a woman, but it probably was a man.
Yeah.
Because it's a long time ago. They go to the person with the cigar box and says, I need to go to the doctor. They get some money for it. They go over there. And then that spread from village to village. And then at some point, the state said, this is brilliant.
Great
now
idea.
More people goes to the doctors. That's good because we want a healthy, what's that called? Healthy citizens.
Yeah.
Because
nation.
Imagine the other way around. Today, we don't have health insurance. That's not on the state budget.
Yeah.
Now we come to them and we say, you need to put on the state budget health insurance for all. They would laugh at us and say, but where should the money come from? Should we take it from the schools?
I guess that's what they say in the US.
It is. No, but it's also what we say today when we are talking about, but have you seen how much wild and protected nature we have? I thought it was 2.4%, but then I read recently that really it's only 0.5%.
Oh, great.
And then we say we need to transform that because that's very good for Denmark. And then they're like, but where should the money come from? But then they made and how do you even also translate that? The Danish Green Tripart.
The new Green Deal.
Yeah, the new Green Deal. They found money, but all the stories that are coming out now is it's not enough.
Yeah.
And where should the money come from? It should come from bottom up. That's also why a big like Andelsgaard.
They're great.
It's one of the most uplifting stories in Denmark at the moment because it is exactly that.
If you don't know Andelsgaard, if you're listening, then you should definitely go check them out online.
Yes, and it's Smådriftsfordele like in every single way. Because first of all, they leverage the power of the people, so it's ordinary people who give, I think it's 150 kroner per month, to support that Andelsgaard then buys up land, often monoculture, old
farm,
previously monoculture farms. I think there's just been a DR program, Jorden Kalder, on it, where they said that it was a sand dust that they had taken over, where they did some non-organic potato farming.
Okay.
And then they do the hard work of transforming that into a small ecological or organic, it's called small organic, farm using regenerative methods. It's small-scale farming. I think the largest farm is maybe 4 hectares, which is like, it is so small in the Danish context. The average Danish farm
compared to the giant farms,
the average one is 200 hectares. On a global scale, a small farm, most farms are 2 to 4 hectares. But in Denmark, you would say it's just impossible. It can't work, but it can. So they do that. So it's small-scale farming, more nutrition per hectare, feeds more people.
They're probably
and then they are built in a modular way, which is also one of the things that we preach when we want to have small-scale solutions within a large frame. So Andelsgaard buys up more and more farms. They have now 6 farms, I think, and are going to buy up more. But they don't run them all.
No, there's like people living on them.
They lease them out, and then they have their own owners that run their own business.
It's a great model.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, that was some good examples like to end it off with. But we're going to have to stop there. There's so many things to talk about, I feel like, in this in this direction. But that's all the time we have for today. But thank you for joining me. And if there's someone who's listening that would like to follow your work with Post-Growth Guide or the new book, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Where my name is Marcus Feldthus.
Yeah, we'll write it in the caption also.
And smådriftsfordele.dk or postgrowthguide.com.
Okay, lovely. That's perfect. And they can also find KAOSPILOT at all the socials and KAOSPILOT.dk. And that's where we're going to end today. Thank you for joining. And to our listeners, I hope you stay tuned for upcoming episodes.
Thank you for having me.